We all have movies we like to watch around this time of year. Macabre stories about ghosts and monsters that help us enjoy the Halloween season. My go-tos are The Nightmare Before Christmas, Beetlejuice, and Halloween Town High. But if I were to ask you some of your favorite Halloween movies, undoubtedly some of you would say Coraline, the 2009 stop-motion adaptation of the middle grade book by Neil Gaiman. And I had actually not consumed either of these until this month, which I know is unusual given that I love animation and it's got the same director as The Nightmare Before Christmas, Henry Selick. Coraline is about a young girl named Coraline, who has just moved into a new apartment with her inattentive parents. She's got some weird neighbors, but she's a bit bored in her new surroundings. But then she discovers a door in her living room that leads to an altered version of her own world, constructed by a horrible monster that wants to trap her there forever. But Coraline defeats the monster and rescues her kidnapped parents. Before we get started, it's important to note that the book and the movie are not the same story. Though they do share the premise I just described, the characters, themes, and messages are all quite different from each other. In a funny sort of way, these separate works are an uncanny version of each other, much like the slanted world Coraline finds in the book. The book is a story about maturation and identity, while the movie is a story about temptation and deception. The book is more focused on character, and the movie on adventure. That doesn't make one bad and one good, it just means that they're different. In fact, they're so different that a straight book versus movie comparison doesn't really work. For example, the other world in the book is certainly more interesting, but it's creepy and uncanny from the beginning, and it makes Coraline feel uncomfortable, so she leaves. In the movie, the other world is a bright and exciting paradise that appeals to the shortcomings in Coraline's own life. And Coraline wants to stay there, until the button incident.
No way! You're not sewing buttons in my eyes!
These two settings are so different from each other that you can't really say that one is objectively better than the other. Though you can absolutely have a preference. And for the sake of honesty, I preferred the book. But I'm not just gonna sit here and tell you guys how the movie is worse because it didn't do everything the book did. I think that would be kinda silly given that different isn't synonymous with better. That being said, let's talk about why I hated Wybie with a passion of 1,000 unnecessary banana slugs.
We're hunting banana slugs.
Wyborn Lovett, Wybie for short, is an adorable geeky kid the same age as Coraline. He was created for the movie, and in a word, Wybie is unnecessary. Selick has stated a few different times that he wrote Wybie in so that Coraline wouldn't just be wandering around talking to herself the whole time. For the time being, we're going to ignore the fact that this sounds vaguely misogynistic. His answer seems like a legitimate concern for a book with a single hero, until you realize that there are nearly 20 characters that Coraline interacts with in the book. Which is a lot! Sure, Coraline is alone sometimes in the book, but she's also alone in the movie. And she talks to herself? So, mission not accomplished? I don't know, Selick's answer doesn't really hold up at all because of that. But this video would be a lot shorter if I just stopped it there, and I'm not gonna! I have a lot more to say about Wybie!
Ultimately, it doesn't matter if Wybie was actually stuck in this story to ensure boys would watch a movie about a female heroine or not.
What matters is that Wybie does not serve any purpose in this story. If he was interesting, I'd probably cut him some slack. But he's just not. I don't think it would be fair to say that Wybie is symbolic of all of my problems with this movie, but he's a pretty big chunk, not gonna lie. And it's not his personality that bothers me. The movie actually really wants you to like and empathize with him. I think a lot more than it wants you to like Coraline. It's how he exists and alters the story that bothers me. For the sake of fairness, let's look at the one interesting thing that Wybie brings to the movie. His great aunt. Wybie's grandmother, Mrs. Lovat, owns the house Coraline lives in, and we learn that when she was a little girl, her sister disappeared in that house. Later we learn that the other mother snatched her because duh. She's the doll shown in the opening credits and one of the ghost kids Coraline meets. This is an interesting thread, and it has the potential to be an emotionally compelling subplot. But there's no real intrigue because absolutely no one who is on screen for more than 5 seconds cares about the answer to this mystery. I'm not kidding. Wybie's grandmother, on screen for 5 seconds. And because of that, there's no payoff. There's no reason for it. It's such a small part of the story that it's pretty easy to forget it's even a thing, and the movie doesn't really do enough with it to justify its existence in the narrative. Ha, kinda like Wybie. Besides Coraline and the other mother, Wybie has the most physical presence in the story, which is weird.
Because there isn't really a place for him in this story.
He just sits on top of an already robust and complete cast, appearing only when he needs to further the story in some way. Much like those in the other world are instruments of the beldam, Wybie is an instrument of the plot. He is exposition, a savior, a filler scene. He is pushed and shoved and padded into any cracks and holes the story needs to fill. He's essentially plot putty. And what's hilarious is that the movie tries to turn him into a main character. And the movie does this by having him sponge relevant dialogue and action from the other characters, leaving everyone a bit duller as a result. He reduces the presence of the cat and the other father the most, which is very disappointing because the cat is actually really awesome, and in the book he and Coraline have this interesting camaraderie. Gah! But that's beside the point. From a writing standpoint, his creation makes no sense. It doesn't make sense to downgrade other characters to build a new and lackluster one. You're supposed to do the opposite, especially when the cast is as big as it is in Coraline. What bothers me more than anything else about the cobbled nature of Wybie is how he fundamentally changes Coraline as a result. In the book, Coraline is a very clever, assured, resourceful, and observant girl. She's brave and she likes to explore. She's kind and compassionate to those who need help. But above all else, she is self-reliant. She receives help, but nobody has to save her. And yet, with the addition of Wybie, Coraline's self-reliance is practically non-existent. Wybie tells her where the well is. It's his delivery of the doll rather than her discovery of the door that kicks the plot into motion. The other version of him saves her from the mirror and helps her escape the world. The cat has to tell Coraline the other mother is dangerous, and he only knows that because
the other Wybie told me so.
The one that irks me the most is that in the book, she sets a deliberate trap to dispose of the hand forever. But this is scrapped in the movie so that Wybie can dramatically ride in on his mountain bike and save her. It makes me so angry, it's laughable. Coraline is also her meanest and most unlikable when she's around Wybie because she hates him. For some reason. I mean, she's just dramatically mean to him.
The village stalker.
Ow! I do want to mention that there's some really weird ableist coding present in his character. He has a hunched back, he stutters, he rarely looks at Coraline straight on, he has odd interest, he has a bit of a gait, and he's often nervous during simple social interactions.
This makes the insults Coraline directs at him especially cringeworthy.
I think I heard someone calling you Wyborn.
What? I didn't hear anything.
Oh, I definitely heard someone. Why were you born?
Damn, Coraline! Was that even necessary?
Wybie is such an odd character, from the way the movie treats him, to his function, to just how out of place he is. All of that being said, I don't think Wybie makes Coraline a bad movie. The animation is gorgeous, and the voice acting is fantastic, and I did enjoy the film. It's not one of my favorites, and I think that it would have been much stronger without Wybie, but that doesn't mean it's a bad movie.
Regardless of this writing gaffe, I think we can all agree that if you're looking to traumatize children this Halloween season, Coraline is definitely the way to go.
Just wanted to wish you all a happy Halloween. I was really excited to have some spooky themed content for you guys. I also just wanted to reiterate that if you really like this movie, that's okay, I'm not attacking you. And I hope you enjoyed the video regardless. I'd also be really interested to know your opinion in the comments. Have you read the book? Do you have a preference? Do you have any strong feelings about Wybie? And subscribe to The Princess and the Scrivener for more videos on Disney, intersectional feminism, pop culture critiques, and more. The Princess will see you next week. I'm not saying the Halloween Town movies are high caliber filmmaking, but they are so freaking spoopy, I love it. Just not that last one.